All right. The next piece I'm going to do, I wasn't planning on doing it, but I watched the debates a few days ago, and so, like, I don't know, one of the topics reminded me of my poem, so I feel like putting that out there. It's called The A Word, First Man of Gods. As I close my eyes to dream, I drift back and disappear, with the sound of my mother's voice echoing in the absence of my mind. I once considered an abortion. Life is an amazing thing when you think of how easily it may have never been. From a sperm who never learned to swim through a fallopian maze to a flower who forgets to bloom. Or from pulling the plug on a loved one to a failed mission. We are always just one step away from an abortion. 2 years after their second child, my parents contemplated adopting when, miraculously, I was conceived. But 9 weeks into pregnancy, my mother was bedridden, plagued with illness. Her lungs collapsed in dreams of overwhelming floods. Drowning in fear, she gasped for air, kicking wildly like the newly conceived, and she can still faintly remember the doctor saying, "Termination is an option." Pictures of a dead fetus makes choices like these seem easy only to the inexperienced. My mother could not stop thinking about how it must feel to force 2 little girls to grow up without a mother in the streets of a neighborhood that was steadily growing worse. Or for a husband left alone to pick up the pieces of a shattered world like gluing a broken mirror back together, praying for 7 years of better luck. Sometimes I question if maybe she should have aborted after all. Every time I remember how embarrassed I was to hug her in public. Every time I forget to say I love you before hanging up the phone. Every time I take her love for granted, I wonder if maybe her life would have been better were I never to have been born at all. But then I remember when she told me the day she became a fortune teller. An ultrasound Sunday provided sounds so silent and lovely, hearts skipped beats to give Dove Prince dance music when dogs cry. And the doctor said, "These are your son's hands." My mother saw pens sprout from palms like proud sequoias standing tall with rings that would long outlive my breath. "These are your son's legs." She saw stubborn stumps with feet firmly planted in the lands of compassion and conviction, never to bow down to any weather, like the man she married, like the children she'd raised, like the parents she would bury. "This is your son's heartbeat." My mother saw drums pound rhythms in tree trunks. Unconditional love that would stray only one day, to somehow find way into the hands of her Adam's Eve, where they may plant forests in the sand, weeds in the concrete, jungles in the desert that may perhaps spawn grandkids of her favorite kind, the independent, the intelligent, the inquisitive, that may ask one day, where do babies come from?